Hey buddies, let's today continue with business data analytics. Today we will starting with 8.5, which talks about communication of information and quality decision making. Now let's see what does this chapter actually talks about. It talks about quality information. Quality information is vital for making good quality decisions. So if you have good quality decisions, that would enable you to take good decisions or to make good decisions. How it eventually helps? It eventually helps to add higher values to your business insights, leading to better strategic decisions. So good quality information help you in better decision making, right? So data analytics is very vital for lean finance. Now what is lean finance? Lean finance is primarily finance processes which with reduced cost and which increases speed, flexibility and quality. So if you just look at this word lean simply means which is very slimmed down or which is very much in shape. So how do you get things in shape? You get things in shape by reducing its cost and by increasing its speed, flexibility and quality, right? So today now we will look at various abilities and skill sets that are required for transforming information into process for quality decision making, right? So what we are looking at, we are looking at various skill sets which are basically required for transforming what information into process of quality decision making. So what are the various steps? The first step is logical understanding of structured and unstructured data. Now what is structured data? Something which is very organized, something which is a part of a report is basically a structured data. Unstructured data is which is very random, but it has a lot of significance. So you have to have an understanding of structured and unstructured data, and eventually using the gathered information to corporate planning, budgeting, forecasting and decision support. So how does this structured and unstructured data helps you? It helps you by whatever information that you have gathered that would eventually lead to make you good planning, budgeting and forecasting and decision support, right? How does quality decision making helps in further ways? It helps you to predict outcomes more effectively compared to older methods of forecasting which were based on historical financial reports. So if you have a structured data and an unstructured data and it is basically pulled out of a quality information, you would find you would be able to predict the outcomes more effectively as compared to the historical methods of just looking at the financial reports. So that's how this ability will actually help you. Similarly, you can have a real-time spotting of emerging opportunities. Real-time spotting is nothing but whatever is happening simultaneously or in real time, as in something which is happening right now. If that data is being captured or being taken a record of, that would help you to tap the emerging opportunities or the opportunities that can help grow your business more, right? Now then you talk about making strategies to respond unexpected events like market volatility and black swan events through simulation technique. Okay, now let's understand what is a black swan event. Black swan event is nothing but it is basically an extremely negative event which is impossible to predict, right? For example, if you talk about COVID or if you talk about Russia-Ukraine war, these are called as black swan event. No one expected them to happen, but it suddenly happened. So what it can do is it can bring a downfall to the stock markets or the other markets. It can lead to downfall of a business suddenly. It's very unexpected. So basically it helps you to make strategies to respond to such unexpected events like market volatility and what you called as a black swan event through simulation technique. What is simulation? If you would have seen these pilots basically coach on a simulation airplane, right? So simulation generally means a dummy. So it would look very similar to the original one. So you can make a simulation technique and on the basis of that, you can make strategies to respond to situations which are very unexpected in nature, right? Then it helps you to diagnose, filter and extract value. From what? From operational and financial information for making better decisions. So it helps you to basically diagnose. That means you need to figure out. It helps you in figuring out the problem. It helps you to filter it, and whatever value you can extract the best of them from what? From operational and financial information. It will eventually help you to make better decisions, right? Then you talk about recognizing feasible advantages to service customers in a better way. So whatever advantages you get in servicing customer in a better manner, basically this can help you in making good quality decision making, right? Helps in identifying any fraud possibilities. So if there's any fraud happening or there is a fraud that someone intends to do, then in that case this digitization or business analytics can play a very pivotal role, and it helps in building useful dashboards to measure and showcase success, eventually leading to effective strategies. What is dashboard? Dashboard is simply the front screen or the face of something through which you can know as to what is the problem that is expected to come or the opportunities that can be expected to be tapped, and it also showcases success if something has already been undertaken, leading to effective strategies, right? So let's look at these points once again. These are the abilities or skill sets that are required for transforming information into process for quality decision making. First of all, you to have a logical understanding of structure and unstructured data. You can actually predict the outcomes more effectively. It helps you in the real-time spotting of the emerging opportunities, making strategies to respond to unexpected events like market volatility or black swan events. It helps you to diagnose, filter, and extract value for better decision making. It helps you in recognizing advantages to service customers in a better manner, helps in identifying any fraud possibilities, and whatever useful dashboards are there, you can measure and showcase success, eventually leading to effective strategies, right? So data driven business develops a business intelligence system which provides accurate strategic insight into operational and financial system. So if you have this will actually help you to develop a good business intelligence system, eventually leading you to have a good look into or good insight into the operational and the financial system, and you can take the measures accordingly, right? So this is all about chapter 8.5. Now we move on to the next one, that is 8.6. 8.6 talks about the professional skepticism or regarding data. So what is a skepticism? Skepticism is nothing but it simply means doubt. Skepticism literal meaning is basically doubt, right? So what does this chapter talk about? Let's have a look at this. Managers should never make important analysis on the face value. So whatever data you see, you simply can't look at it and come to a conclusion, right? You have to have a deep understanding of whatever data you're looking at, and then you have to analyze on the basis of that. So what it says is there must be a deeper understanding of the data that needs to be explored, and whatever appears at the face value should be looked with doubt or skepticism. So whatever you look at the face of something, that should be always looked with a doubt, right? But if you have to have a good understanding of the system, then you need to get into the insights of the data. So that's what this talks about. Then it says, although latest data analytic tools and techniques help the accounting and financial professionals to gain unique insights into data, but along with it, there come unique challenges also. Now, what are these challenges? Data available is bigger, but along with it, there are challenges pertaining to managing and investing red flags. What is red flags? If there is any kind of caution that has to be exercised, that is called as a red flag. Something which is very fishy in nature, or something which is very, which is out of expected, or something which can create problem for the business. So it simply says that data available may be bigger with the help of data analytics, but what it can create is you have to know as to what are the challenges that they have to encounter. At the same time, you got to investigate the red flags if there are any, right? Then a major concern is issue of false positives. Okay, now what is false positive? Data may wrongly indicate that a particular condition is present, eventually leading to variation of data. Now, false positive simply means, a good example of false positive can be, for example, a patient may be diagnosed with diabetes, but actually they may not have it, right? So test may show something wrong, or the reports has been analyzed wrongly. So that is false positive. So hence, the major concern is false positive. You may have a data that may be showing a condition, but eventually leading to the variation of data. So this is not what you wanted, or this is not what is actually on cards, but this is what is reflecting in the paper, right? So size of false positive increase proportionately with size and complexity of data. So the larger the size of the data, the more complex it becomes, and it can also create a lot of false positives for you, right? Then it says professional skepticism is an important focus area for practitioners, researchers, regulators, and standard setters. Right, so someone who's practicing something or they are researching into something, regulators like for example SEBI or RBI, and if there are standard setters, as in they are laying down the rules of something, for them professional skepticism plays a very important role. But also they may result in additional cost. Yes, because if you are hiring more people So if you hire more people, then there will be additional cost that will be involved into it, right? So it is important to identify areas where professional skepticism should be applied. There has to be a fine balance. Please note this line. This is very, very important. There has to be fine balance between what? Between costly skepticism, right? So whatever skepticism that you have, that should not have a huge cost associated to it. And also whatever data has been analyzed, they should not be underutilized, right? This to ensure that the cost is under control. So there has to be a fine balance between the costly skepticism and underutilizing data analytics to keep the cost under control. So this is the crux of the professional skepticism that we talk about. So let's revise it once again. Simply, professional skepticism is what? It talks about the doubt that a professional should have. Skepticism actually means doubt regarding what? Regarding the data that we are collecting. The manager should never make important analysis on the face value. They should get into the business insights, and this business insights can be done only if they look the data which is at the face value with doubt or skepticism. Also, you need to remember that the data that is available is basically bigger, but when the data is bigger, there are many challenges that comes along with it. Basically, it's difficult to manage, and at the same time, they can have a lot of red flags. So that needs to be investigated properly. Then the other major concern that is there is false positive. False positive is nothing. Keep the example of diabetes in your mind. You may be diagnosed with diabetes, but actually the report doesn't show that, right? So if the report is wrong, that is false positive. Data may wrongly indicate that particular condition, but actually it is not there. There may be a variation of data. So size of false positive can increase proportionately. How? Through the size and the complexity of the data. And the professional skepticism basically involves some additional cost, but it is also an important focus area for practitioners, researchers, regulators, and standard setters, right? And finally, you have to have a look into the areas where professional skepticism should be applied, and you also have to make sure that there is a fine balance between the costly skepticism and the underutilizing of data analytics to keep the cost under control, right? Now let's move on to the next chapter or the next subpart, which is 8.7, that talks about ethical use of data and information, right? So there are 5 principles which governs them. 5 principles of data ethics that business organization should follow. Now what are these 5 principles of data ethics that a business is supposed to be follow? That the business is supposed to follow? One is regarding the ownership. Now what is this ownership? Now, without anyone's permission, it is very illegal, unethical, or unlawful to collect someone's personal data, right? So this is the first thing that you need to keep in mind. Secondly, the consent can be obtained. Now, whenever you are trying to collect some data, there has to be consent that has to be obtained. Now, what are the various ways of obtaining the consent online? So it can be through digital privacy policies, or it can be through signed agreements, or by agreeing to terms and conditions. So these are the various ways through which a consent can be obtained from the a person from whom the data is being collected. Now, beforehand permissions are advisable to avoid future or legal complications. So, whomsoever you are collecting the data from, they should be aware of that. It should not be, they should be kept in hindsight and then the information should be collected. They shouldn't be unaware of that. So, the person from whom you are collecting the data, it's good that if you take a beforehand permission from them. Also, you have to exercise extra caution in case of financial data, because wherever it involves money, then it becomes very sensitive. So it's very important for you to make sure that you have an extra caution exercised in the case of financial data. So first is regarding ownership. We remember this by O. The second one is transparency. Now what is transparency? Basically, from whoever data is collected, they should know the purpose of data collection, right? It's very similar to getting a beforehand permission. So whosoever from whomsoever you're collecting the data, they should be knowing as to why this data is being collected from them. So whenever you talk about the financial data you collect from clients, they again should know the purpose of data collection, right? Very similar to what we have spoken just now. Okay, in case of using cookies to track the online behavior of the user, the same shall be conveyed through a written policy. Now what are cookies? Cookies are nothing but they are basically the files created by the websites one visit. So you have to remember, this is basically to remember your preference, but also remember that these preferences eventually are compromised. So whenever you are using cookies to capture someone's data, then in that case you also got to remember that they are basically showing their preferences, but they have to also make sure these preferences are not being compromised to someone else, right? So that is all about using cookies. So next, so we remember this as T. Now the next one is privacy. Now this is regarding privacy. Now privacy is also an important aspect. You have to know that since user allow the access of his personally identifiable information, right? So he's giving his personal information. So this is called as PII, personally identifiable information. It should not be made available publicly. So this is only for your business purpose. They're trusting you and they are giving you the information. Then in that case, it's your responsibility to make sure that you maintain the confidentiality of the information. You have to make sure that this is not being disclosed publicly. You would have seen that many a times you would have given some kind of information to someone and randomly you would have been receiving calls from some other party. So that is basically compromising the confidentiality of your data. So you obviously have to make sure that whenever as a business someone is giving you an information, then it should not be made publicly, right? It should not be made public rather. Companies should mandatorily furnish financial information. For example, their annual reports, that is their balance sheet, P&L. You would have seen many companies disclosing their Q3 or annual reports or Q1 reports, that is quarterly or half yearly or the annual reports. Now because the people are basically sharing their data, it's also your responsibility to tell where exactly you stand, right? So that will give them a transparency, but at the same time that would also help them to know that their data is also private, because the company to whom they are disclosing the data, they also are very aware of what is their responsibility. So hence the company should mandatorily furnish all their financial information on regular basis, right? Half yearly, quarterly or annually, whatever it is. There has to be a data security process which is in place. What are these various data security processes? This can be file encryption, or basically it can be a dual authentication password, etc. Now, for example, you would have seen if you're logging into a net banking, in that case you have to punch in your ID password or a PIN number. So that is basically an authentication password. What is file encryption? Encryption is nothing but is basically a mathematical model to scramble data. Only authorized parties can unscramble it, right? For example, you would have seen certain data to be coded. It may be in form of numbers. Now these numbers can only be decoded by the user or by the authorized parties. So this is called as this is called as file encryption. So any data which is basically in a mathematical form or basically in terms of numbers, it is basically coded in nature. Only authorized parties are enabled to decode it. So that is called as file encryption. Now data security process. So these are the example of how do you secure data, that is file encryption and through dual authentication password. They should be in place and protect privacy of data, since confidential data may fall in wrong hands. That's very obvious, because if you don't save someone's data, then some wrong person may actually use it, or they may take undue advantage of it. So it's very important for you to protect the privacy of the user of the client rather, right? Then you talk about the intention. Now this privacy you can remember by P. This intention you remember as I. What is intention? Intention of data analysis shouldn't be making profit from other weaknesses, right? So you should not take undue advantage of someone. Unnecessary data collection should be avoided. So something which is not needed for your business, I think it's very important for a company to make sure that they avoid collecting those data. And finally we have regarding outcomes. You remember it as O. Then it becomes certain results of data analysis may adversely affect the clients and data providers, right? This is called disparate impact, which is unethical. Disparate simply means something which is very contrasting. Or disparate also means something which is very differing. So basically you should not collect any data which is not required, or this may also have, or some kind of results of data analysis may adversely affect the clients and the data providers. So this is basically unethical. So whatever data has been analyzed, it has to be analyzed in context of the business. At the same time, you have to make sure that that doesn't adversely affect the clients and the data providers, right? Now, how do you remember all these points? The simple trick is to remember it as OTP. It's not one-time password. OTP here stands for ownership, transparency and privacy. And the other 2 points to remember is basically IO. So OTP IO, that's how I found it easier. If you have a better way to remember, you can do that. IO here stands for intention and outcomes, right? So this is all about ethical use of data and information. We'll quickly revise. What are the 5 principles that governs the data ethics that a business organization should follow? One is regarding ownership. ownership is nothing but it talks about the unlawful and unethical to collect. It's basically unlawful and unethical to collect someone's personal data. Consent should be obtained. How can you obtain the consent? It can be obtained only through digital privacy policies or signed agreements or by agreeing to terms and conditions. And beforehand permission should be taken in order to avoid any future or legal complications, and extra caution should be exercised specifically in case of financial data. And you talk about T, it talks about the transparency. Transparency means user from whom data is collected shall know the purpose of data collection. They should be aware of it. Similarly, when financial data is collected from clients, they should be aware of the purpose of the data collection. And in case of using cookies to track the online behavior of the user, the same should be conveyed through user written policy, right? Then you talk about privacy. Privacy is basically, this is a very important word to remember, that is PII. PII is nothing but it is personally identifiable information. It should be made available, it should not be made available publicly, I'm sorry. Companies should mandatorily furnish their financial information, for example their annual reports, and data security process like file encryption, dual authentication password should be in place for what? To protect the privacy of data, since confidential data may fall in the wrong hands. Then you talk about regarding intention. Intention shouldn't be for making profit through other weaknesses. Unnecessary data collection should be avoided. And finally, you talk about the outcome status O. Certain results of data analysis may adversely affect the clients and data providers. This is called as disparate impact. Disparate means something which is very contrasting or differing, and this is very much unethical, right? So the trick to remember this is OTPIO. So O stands for what? O stands for ownership, T for transparency, P for privacy, I for intention, and O for outcomes, right? So this is all about chapter 8. Now let's look at the various multiple choice questions that are at the back of your book. If you have not seen my older video, please check it, because I have covered the topics from 8.1 to 8.3 if I am not wrong. Yes, 8.1 to 8.4 has already been covered. So if you have not looked into those videos, please check that. Please subscribe to our channel, and please share with your friends. If you like this content, please make sure that you press the like button. Now let's look at the various MCQ questions. Numerical data may be expressed as what? Numerical data can be expressed in the form of what? It's very obvious. Numerical data has to be expressed in the form of numbers, right? So option B is the right answer. Then you talk about the descriptive data may be deciphered as. Deciphered as means detected or to be known as. This may be known as, may be deciphered in the form of qualitative information. So basically the descriptive data is deciphered as a qualitative information. Now qualitative information is nothing. If you would have seen my older videos, I would have spoken about HUL. Where in HUL annual reports we have spoken about the vision of HUL. So basically it helps the user in making judicious investment decision. So that's what is qualitative information important for. Okay, then you talk about data represented in the form of picture. It is called as a graphic data, right? So for example, graphic data is nothing but if you look at a share price chart of any company for a specified period of time, for say 6 months or 1 year, that is called as a graphical data. Which of the following are the reason for digitization? Helps in work processing, requires less storage, digitized record may access by more than one person simultaneously, all of the above. Digitization basically helps in all of these. Hence D is the right answer. And finally you talk about, please remember in 8.3 chapter we would have discussed the 9 points. This is only a part of it. So if you are not aware of the other ones, please have a look at that video. And finally we talk about the question, to make the data turn into user-friendly information, it should go one or more of the following core steps. So what are the various steps? Collection of data, organizing the data, data processing, all of the above. The correct answer is all of the above. Now there is a sequence that you need to know. First is basically collection. Then we talk about the organizing of the data. Then we talk about processing. Further we talk about the integration of data. Then we talk about the utilization. And finally we talk about the data that has been collected to be reported. Right, so this is the sequence. So you first do collection, then you do organizing, then you do processing, then you do integration, then you utilize the data, and finally you report the data. So this is the sequence. So hence our correct option should be option number D. Now let's look at the true and false answers. This statement is not complete in itself. Before this improve, please add digitization. So the statement is digitization improves classification and indexing for documents. This helps in, this here refers to digitization, rather helps in retrieval of records, and this is true. Data is not a source of information, which is false. Data is basically a source of information. One of the largest digitization project taken up in India is unique identification ID or Aadhaar. Yes, that's the correct answer. When these information is used for solving a problem, we may use it may be done through the use of knowledge. Yes, that is correct. And any data expressed as a number is a numerical data. Yes, anything which is expressed in terms of numbers is basically a numerical data, and that's the right answer. Okay, now let's come on to the fill in the blanks. There are primarily dash objectives of digitization. There are basically two objectives of digitization. What are these two objectives? The first objective is basically widespread access of data and information to large group of users. And the second point that we talk about is preservation of data for a longer period. So these basically are the two objectives. So whenever they ask you a question, how many objectives are there of digitization? There are two objectives. First is the widespread access of data and information to large group of users, and the second one is preservation of data for a longer period of time. By the term dash, we mean the data expressed in numbers. So by the term what? By the term quantitative data. Quantitative data means data expressed in numbers. Daily stock price of Tata Steel Limited is an example of daily stock price. So we are talking about numbers, hence it's an example of numerical data. Data is a dash of information. Data is nothing but it is basically a source of information. And when these information is used for solving a problem, we may use by the use of knowledge. Some mistakes in your books, so please check the language of it. I think this question is same as what we saw in point 4 of true or false. So hence the correct answer is knowledge. Right. So that's a lot about today's video. In the next video, we will be starting data processing, organization, and cleaning and validation. If you're not subscribed to the video, please subscribe to it. I'll make sure before your exams, all these videos on business data analytics is being covered as far as the examination is concerned. So whatever we learn here will be only from examination perspective. So watching my videos will be more than sufficient for you to score good 15 to 18 marks in business data analytics, right? So thank you for joining and happy learning.